Now, Hal told us the story of this guitar, but early this morning, he told me the greatest story I've ever heard, at least in the top 5. So it's not a guitar story, but it's a great story. Tell me the original Johnny B. Goode story.
Well, Mark, when I was just a youngster and thought I was immortal, I loved rock and roll and loved to play the guitar. Well, St. Louis closed early, so we went over to East St. Louis and we played at places like Radisson, Snake Pit, End of the Line, and the Blue Note, which is owned by the same people that own the Apollo Theater. Well, the entertainment manager there was a guy by the name of Matt Guitar Murphy. And I told him, I said, Matt, I love coming over here. And he said, well, if you come over in this place, he said, you're going to have to learn a couple of things. He said, I don't think you got the brains to play jazz, but I think you might have the soul to play blues. I said, okay, teach me blues. He said, well, I got to teach you something else first. You ain't never going to be rich. You ain't never going to be famous. So if you're doing this for anything other than the pure love of the music, find something else to do. So he said, by the way, are you still playing with that big rock and roll band, the Downbeats? And I said, yes. He said, well, Chuck Berry just had a hit record, Maybelline, and because of the turmoil with all the black artists, he took all the money and he bought a couple of clubs. He bought a Palace Club down on the Bolivar Strip in St. Louis in the Gaslight District. He needs a house band. And I said, okay. He said, I got you set up to go in Thursday. So we go in Thursday, we set up and everything. He said, oh, by the way, Chuck won't be there. You'll see Francine. So, okay. So we set up. Francine comes out, says, okay, boys, do it. We play the first number, thought we were pretty good. We go into the second number. She goes, okay. And I said, oh, what's wrong? She says, you got the job, don't overplay. And so I said, great. So we were there for practicing on Thursday, and one day Chuck walks in and he's got a demo record. He said, here, I want you to listen to this. So we put it on the Victrola and we listened to it. He said, what do you think? I said, well, it's a great song. I said, but it's about a guitar player. And I said, it's got a piano introduction and a piano solo. Now, granted, it's the best rock and roll piano work that we've ever heard, but it's not guitar. I said, and you got a little lyric problem. He said, what's that? I said, well, people are becoming aware and you can't do racial stereotypes. It's just not right. He said, what do you mean? I said, well, right in the song you say, my, that little colored boy could play. He said, well, what should I put in instead? I said, well, I'm a country boy and I can play. He said, okay, let's see, that little country boy could play. Okay, we'll put that in. He said, work something up and I want you to play it Friday night. I said, okay. So I go over to East St. Louis and I said to Matt Murphy, I said, Matt, he said, I know, you got yourself in deep, I'll bail you out. So Matt and I sat in the back office and figured out how to do the intro and how to do a good intro with double stops and how to play the solos. So I go to the club on Friday night. We get the high sign from Chuck. We do the song. He said, and we take a break. He comes over and gets me and says, come on over to my table. We go over to the table and sit down. There's these two guys in suits, and I'm scared to death. It's a liquor board. But then he says they're his friends. He says, let me introduce you to Philip and Leonard Chess. They have a recording studio in Chicago. And so Leonard says, kid, I like what you did with that. Will you go to Chicago and record it? I said, well, that depends. He said, Matt Murphy is in. I said, okay, then I'll go. So we went to Chicago, spent 9 days there, sightseeing and recording. And the classic version of Johnny B. Goode that you hear, that's Chuck Berry, the Johnny Johnson Trio, Matt Murphy, and me.
Man, I wish you had that guitar with you today.
Yeah, well, I could have brought the Johnny B. Goode guitar.
That'd be great.
I still have it.
That's great. Our friend Hal, every guitar has a story. He knows a couple of them.
Thank you, Mark. It's certainly a pleasure being here. If you listen to the record really closely, you'll hear 3 guitars. Chuck Berry is doing a few chords and stuff, okay? Matt Murphy starts the introduction, and then I come in. And then Matt Murphy does the first part of the solo, and I do the second part. You can hear the difference.